Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off on another episode of the Hyper-anomalous Esoteric Research Organization podcast, HEROparanormal, broadcasting just south of the Utah UFO Ranch in the Uinta Basin of Utah. My name is Ryan, anomalous ambassador of the airwaves, bringing you an epic episode today. If you're into gold, treasure, giants, the underworld of Utah, and many of the mysteries held within the Uinta Mountains, you've surely heard of our guest today. He is none other than Terry Carter, treasure hunter and adventurer. He is someone I've wanted to talk to for quite some time. His knowledge of the area is astounding. The people he talks to are astounding. And his YouTube channel is something that cannot be missed. Without going into all of the elements of his research and investigations, let's just get right to it. Terry Carter, welcome to the HEROparanormal podcast.
I guess that means I'm on, huh?
You are on, my friend. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thanks for inviting me. But, man, it should be me interviewing you.
Oh, I don't know about that. I've been enthralled. I appreciate the gesture, but, man, everywhere I look online when it comes to treasure hunting and unique Uinta Mountain videos, your YouTube channel comes up. And I just have to ask, and I want my listeners to know where they can follow you on YouTube, because it's really quite the adventure following all the people that you talk to and the amazing stories that you get into. Where can they follow you on YouTube, Terry?
So on YouTube, if they just search for Terry Carter or Terry Carter Treasure Hunter on YouTube and look for the skull and crossbones pirate with the patch over its eye, and then that's my channel, and then just kind of sift through them and look for the Uinta Mountain ones, but because there's all kinds of subjects and things on treasure hunting there. But it's not me; it's the people that have agreed to tell us their stories, And so anyway, that's that.
I find it so mesmerizing. Utah has a rich history. There's so many areas we can go. I mean, there's exhaustive research into this, and the fact is that Brigham Young was told by the Ute Chief Walker of a secret gold source high in the back reaches of the Uintas. There's many, many tales of the Rhodes family, Thomas Rhodes in particular, having chosen areas in the Uintas to have this gold placed or store it. And there's also tales of native gold, Spanish gold, Aztec gold. The list goes on and on. Where can we kick this off?
Man, you are right. There is a ton of information out there, or a ton of stories out there in the Uinta Mountains, and starting with, Chief Walker and him finding all this sacred gold and that. But that's kind of what got me hooked in the first place. Is I was working out there in the Vernal area on a power plant in the early '80s, and treasure hunting. I'd seen some shows on TV about them finding gold off the coast of Florida, from the Spanish shipwrecks and whatnot. And so I was interested in that, but it wasn't until I started working on that power plant in Vernal and found out about the lost Rhodes Mine and all the interesting things there in the Uintas. And that got me hooked. And I love the Uintas anyway because they're just beautiful. And that was just another excuse for me to spend more time into the outdoors and searching things, and it just went from there. But where you want to start, I don't know. There's all kinds of things to talk about in all of Utah, but especially there in the Uintas.
I think the Uintas is a great place to start, and you have hit upon the secret word, which is that lost Rhodes mine, or mines, I should say, because I believe there's at least 7 that I believe Caleb Rhodes has mentioned at least 7. And how do we navigate this? What cool or interesting stories have you heard from locals there about the Rhodes mine or anything related to it?
Geez, there's the 7 big mines that we know of, but there was more than that. There was over 100 of the Spanish mines, throughout the Uintas Mountains, but there was just, 7 of them that were big and guarded by the Indians, and the others was guarded by the Indians and whatnot. But some of the local stories, I had a guy come and talk to me about when he was a kid. This guy's in his 70s now. They dropped down into a natural cavern and started following the air movement, and they come to the way he described it was like an illusions, mirages. He wouldn't have known the place kept on going except for he followed the air movement. He ducked underneath some rocks, got on his knees because he could feel the air movement, and followed this passageway clear back into the mountains and found an old door. He said the door on this thing was the craftsmanship. He'd never seen anything like this. It was 7-8 foot tall, 7-8 foot wide, and it was rounded and perfectly fit into the rock. And over the years, calcite had been dripping over it, so it kind of camouflaged it even some. But in that same cavern, somebody found an old an old Roman coin, and I have to wonder, is this, who would have put a door like this down there? I don't know if the Spanish would. There's tales that there was an older culture here, and who that older culture is, was the Romans here, was something like that. I don't know, but there's a ton of stories like that, and currently I am investigating and trying to find this door, retrace this guy's footsteps, and in the same area there's a waybill talking about how the Spaniards, there was 42 of them, and did I lose you?
No, I'm here. I'm just mesmerized. Holy cow.
Oh, so sorry about that. My phone was beeping. So there's a waybill talking about how there was 42 of these Spaniards mining, and the Indians were attacking them. Of course, the Spaniards would enslave the Indians and make them work till they died, and for some funny reason, the Indians didn't like that, so they started revolting and attacking them, and then they finally attacked them and drove them all out. It took whatever it took for the tribes, for the clans to hide these mines, all these any evidences of this stuff. They did what it took to hide it. Well, this waybill talks about how there's 42 other Spaniards. They're getting attacked by the Indians, and so there's 8 of them left, and they've locked the gold behind a wooden door. There are 200 and some odd cargoes of gold and 600 and some odd cargoes of silver behind this wooden door, and they're headed back to Mexico because of the fear of their life. And they've left this waybill and this document of how to get back to this. Of course, then the pioneers came in. The Mexican-American War. The United States won these areas, and so that was lost to these families. Well, this is the same area where this guy had found this door. However, this door doesn't even sound like it's Spaniards, and I'm wondering if the Spaniards stumbled onto something that was even ancienter than what they had, and they was collecting stuff and just didn't get it all out before they came. So it's going to be an adventure just to see this door is a treasure, because he says the only thing that reminds him that he's seen that's even close is some of these old stories, shows on TV where they showed the castles and the dungeons, and he says the doors look just like that, and why somebody would put a door down in a crevice like this is beyond me. There's got to be something interesting behind this door.
This is amazing because, there is, and I'm glad you brought this up. Legend holds that there is an Aztec connection and that forefathers migrated to Mexico City from a land to the north. And that land to the north was a land of red rocks, and I believe they say 4 rivers. And 2 researchers are now claiming that they have found the Aztec homeland in Utah. So this may go back way, way back. And the Rhodes family is one that you just can't ignore when it comes to gold in Utah. And I mean, Thomas Rhodes, he was a trailblazer, a pioneer, a settler, and also a miner. And there's stories of him fighting off bandits trying to steal his gold with the help of his fellows. And I think further proof that he was really, really deep into this gold mining is that, the Council of 12 authorized by Brigham Young to issue handwritten notes called gold-backed notes. They were issued back with, an 80% gold reserve. And this was back in like 1849, if I'm not mistaken, bearing the official seal of the 12 apostles and all backed by a mysterious gold reserve, which many believe may have been Thomas Rhodes' gold to relieve those notes. Have you heard anything from the Rhodes family? And I mean, it seems like they are just in so many of the historical events that took place, at least when it comes to the Mormon Church and Utah gold.
There was more than just the Rhodes family that was involved with that, but the Rhodes, they took an oath that they wouldn't divulge this stuff, and they did not. They left some maps. People have tried to decipher them maps. They did bring out gold and give to the Mormon Church. But back to the Aztec thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been out to Vernal. I don't know if you've been to McConkey Ranch.
Oh, I love that place. Isn't that wild?
So you just go to the McConkey Ranch and you look at them petroglyphs. They're not your regular Native American petroglyphs. Them things, in my most humble but accurate opinion, those things are the most spectacular petroglyphs in all of the United States. I mean, these guys are full-bodied, carved and painted. They look Egyptian or Aztec. They've got jewelry, breastplates, crowns. These things are spectacular, and it's not hard to imagine that these people had the gold. These people are the guys that mined it and made things out of it, And where did it go from there? Is it hidden in one of these 7 caverns, one of these 7 treasure things that you're talking about, that the Indians are back then have been guarding, clear up till now? Is this part of the Aztec treasure? Were these part of the Aztecs? They're just awesome. If you haven't seen these things, you need to go there and witness them firsthand because they're spectacular.
I couldn't agree more, Terry. And in my humble opinion as well, they may be the most important petroglyphs in all of Utah. And there's petroglyphs everywhere in Utah, all through 9 Mile Canyon. I think 9 Mile Canyon has the most petroglyphs anywhere on the planet. But these in particular there at the McConkey Ranch in Dry Fork, these are different. There is just something different than these. And they are depicting giants and headhunters and things that are very different in origin. They just have a different feel about them.
I don't know if you remember, as you're going up Dry Fork to the McConkey Ranch, off to the right-hand side before Remember the Main Park, there's those 2 big natural wind-blown looking caves that you can see off the side across the river. Have you noticed them?
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
I'm pretty sure I know where you're talking about. I think so.
So right there, if you look at the base of that one cliff, or of kind of the cliff that you overlooking where the hole is, where this cave is, there are some of them McConkey type petroglyphs carved in right there, and you could see at one time. It was pretty spectacular. But inside these caves is smoked, and the sandstone's peeled off, and smoke from the bonfires from all the eon of ages, clear up until, recently the kids would go up there and have bonfires and have their cake parties, But if you look real closely, you can still see some of the faded paint of these giants that was carved onto the rocks and painted. The same type of figures that was on McConkey ranches. These caves was adorned with figures all around it, and with painted and chipped in. Man, that thing had to have been spectacular. And I wished I had a time machine so I could go back just to see the spectacular of what that thing did look like, because it had to be pretty awesome.
So true. If we only had a time machine to go back, I mean, there's so many researchers that are providing history now, and you have a lot of them on your YouTube channel. All of my listeners, I highly recommend that they subscribe and listen to it. And this is all through Utah. Even as far, it's all over the place, isn't it?
It's all over the place. And you know what the unique thing about this is, and it is the Mormon Church, and people think, the Mormon Church, they're that fake group, they're the and they got, it's made up, and they made up stories and all that. But here's the thing about the Mormon Church, if they thought it had to deal with their religion, if they thought anything that it had to do with their religion, they tracked it down, they kept the records, they found things and they kept it. But they didn't release it publicly. They've got it in their archives, and so they're a treasure trove of this information of what went on before. The mainstay academia says it was just the natives here before Columbus, and that's it. There was nothing else. There was no intercontinental travel. Well, the Mormon Church has all this stuff in their records of things that they was found up in the Uintas, different things from different cultures that should not be here, but was found here. And then they say, well, the Mormon Church made it up to prove their Book of Mormon or to bolster their religion or something like that. But if you take and look at the facts and the history of what really they did find, and like I say, they didn't release it to people because people were saying that, so they kept it to themselves. But I accidentally stumbled into some of them records, and it took me on a wild ride all across the western United States, scattered anywhere from death and deception on one side of the spectrum to the joy and amazement on the other of being able to see and hear stories, see artifacts firsthand, hear stories firsthand that most people will never ever get to hear and see. It's because I accidentally stumbled into them records that I shouldn't have been, that I shouldn't have seen, and that led me to tracking down. It took me from treasure hunting, in the Uintas to tracking down the ancients, the giants, the things like that. Just out of place archaeology that just doesn't fit, and that fascinated me, some of that stuff. So.
And you've touched on something that I just recently read an amazing article about, and it's the truth. And there was a recent survey in America about Mormons, and it showed that more than 60% of the people surveyed were uninformed about Mormonism, and they're amazing secret keepers in general. Mormons are amazing secret keepers when they have to be, which is a huge asset when it comes to this. And there's one place in American society that Mormons have found a pretty interesting acceptance in agencies like the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, and the CIA, because they are able to keep secrets when it's important to them. And I think that's a real important thing to bring up, Terry, because when it comes to these lost treasures, the maps, the things that are found, and even like Brewers Cave and stories of giants, there's a lot of people in Utah that can keep a secret.
Yep, there is. And not only though do they keep the secrets, but, they was taught to write a journal, to keep a journal. And there's a lot of information in these journals if you just knew where to go, where to look. It was kept hush-hush, some of this stuff. It was only it was only known by just a elite few, and it drives me nuts. People saying, "Oh, it's them damn Mormons." So man, it's all hogwash. But you got to understand that. Forget the religion part, because they thought it tied to their religion. Whether it is or not doesn't matter. They kept track of this stuff and studied this stuff and tried to figure it out, and they just never released it to you or I or the regular mainstream people. They just kept it to themselves. So
that's the truth. And the other interesting thing is that Utah is kind of a museum when it comes to another sort of giants, which is dinosaurs. Whether you're down near Moab or you're in Vernal, the dinosaur history in Utah is very prolific. We have a prolific Fremont culture in Utah. We now have ties to the Aztecs, which could lead to Hernan Cortez bringing gold up from Montezuma. And it just seems like it's a hot spot. No matter which direction you take, it's a hot spot when it comes to gold and Utah. All the roads lead to Utah, so to speak, don't they?
There's a lot of roads that lead to Utah, yep. You talked about Brewers Cave, and that's one of the things I stumbled into in these records, where the Mormon Church was in contact with Brewer trying to get access to this stuff, and then he shut them down and cut them off from that. But I got access to all them files, and people really didn't know about Brewers Cave until then. And I talked to everybody that was still alive, and I interviewed them, and I tracked down things, and I found one of these stone boxes with these copper plates that had an ancient writing on them, and it was wrapped in cedar bark and smeared with pine pitch. I tracked one of these down, and I thought, at the first, this story was far-fetched and bogus. But when I tracked this box down, I had, through the Ancient Historical Research Foundation, which I helped form specifically to do scientific tests and studies to see if some of this stuff was real or if it was just bogus. And we had the bark carbon dated that was wrapped around this box. In this box, this bark came back at 2500 BC, and when that came back and they seen what it was around, they thought, that's bogus. We've screwed up on our test. So they ran the test 10 different times, and 10 different times it come back 2500 BC. Well, at the same time, they was running some tests on some other artifacts, and it was coming back way older than what they thought. So they started checking around, and sure enough, they did screw up. They'd used a different solution than what their machine was calibrated for. So when they recalibrated their machine, the true date of the bark on this was between 50 and 350 BC on this bark. And that is still old and ancient, a wrap that was wrapped around this stone box that had these ancient records in it, but the thing to me was that they ran the test 10 different times to prove that it was a false date, and they couldn't. They did the 2500 BC. They proved that was a false date, but the 50 to 350 BC, they couldn't do. So when I found out that was true, I thought, well, there's no way Brewer could have frauded that. So I started taking a different light on the Brewer Cave story and started tracking it down more earnestly and trying to figure out more about it.
Whoa. Man, that is amazing. And for listeners that aren't familiar with the legend of Brewer's Cave, it's a cave where Mr. Brewer, who was not a man known to lie, him and his son, if I'm not mistaken, they found basically an ancient burial site with 2 mummies, which were of such great size that they were giants. And, the drawings and the recollection of this legend is, it's got this red-headed giant thing written all over it.
So the man was 8'7", had red hair, red beard, and had a crown of gold, a breastplate on, a huge sword, with all these mysterious characters. And the woman was 7'6" or 7'8", and blonde hair with a breastplate and some kind of a crown, and all these ancient characters on it, and they was in these stone sarcophaguses so heavy that he couldn't lift them up. He had to get a handyman jack and kind of get it under there and lift it off slide it off using the handyman jack to kind of to lift the lid off.
Whoa.
So yeah, it's an amazing story, but still, it's just a story. I've validated that the bark, at least the bark, was ancient. That was wrapped around one of these stone boxes that had. This cave was filled with these stone boxes with these ancient records in them. I validated the bark, but still it's just a story until we can find this place to get in and validate that there really is, giant mummies and whatnot. And that's been what I've been working on, but it's easier said than done because you got to kind of battle the government for trying to get in and work on places, and it's just not an easy task. It's just not like you're going to go in there and find it and do things. I have a sneaking suspicion where it's at. I've validated everything and everything lines up. But, until I can try and get the permission, I can't just go in there and start digging up. I'm not going in there to pillage and loot the thing. I want the archaeologists in there. I want it videoed and documented and released on YouTube or to the whole world so everybody knows, so this thing doesn't get hidden up or so it's just not an easy thing to do.
And you're not kidding. You got to be real careful stepping foot into some of these areas. I mean, just recently in this month, July 19th, I believe, a Ute tribal officer shot 2 people after a UTV incident. They were up around the Big Springs area there in Duchesne County, and they were most likely in an area they shouldn't have been in. And there's long been legends of basically staying out of some of these areas in White Rocks and in Duchesne County and in Uinta County. And even though the story of what happened still isn't clear, we do know that a Ute tribal officer, for whatever reason, shot 2 people that were up there kind of cruising around on ATVs. That's all we really know. But you're not kidding. You have to really unlock through the correct pathways permission and access to some of these areas. And getting back to the cave thing, Terry, you've done amazing work with Brewers Cave. And I wanted to also mention the Lovelock Cave. Can you tell listeners a little bit about the Lovelock Cave?
So the Lovelock Cave is kind of not the same story, but it's the Paiutes claim that the giants there were killing their people and eating them, and they got tired of that, so they all banded together and went and started hunting these giants down, ran them into a cave, and then they built a big fire in front of this cave and then smoked them out, and they all died in there. And then over the eons of time, their bodies was covered with bat guano and dirt and whatnot. And anyways, they went in and found some of these giants when they was digging for the bat guano for fertilizer and stuff. But it was put into one of the museums there in Winnemucca, and people could look at the display of the giant skulls, and people talk about it. The old timers talk about it, but you go in there today, and they deny that there was ever any giants. That just people's figment of their imagination. That the newspaper articles were just sensationalized newspaper articles to get better subscriber readership, and that it was all hogwash. But you get back to what's happened here, and then because of NAGPRA and whatnot, anybody that takes money from the government to help, for their museums and whatnot, they got full control of what they say and what they do, and even part of a good example of that is the lead crosses found in the Tucson area, the Roman lead crosses. I was researching that, and the guy who found it in the 1920s, he brought the university out there from Arizona, and they found some of these artifacts themselves in Caliche. But later, after the Smithsonian got involved, they reversed their thing and saying, it was probably a fraud and whatnot. But they dug it out of Caliche themselves, and so when this guy passed on, he no way did he want this to go to the universities because they was helping doing the cover-up after the Smithsonian got involved. So when he did finally pass on, they gave it all his stuff to a private group there, the Historical Society. Well, the state took over the Historical Society, and when I went in there to start doing some research on that, they says any articles or anything I posted or anything I did had to be saying that it was false. It wasn't a real thing. There was really no Roman swords and artifacts found there. It was all a fraud. They just demanded. And so it's just crazy of how things are swept under the rug. And why? Who cares if there was giants? What's the big deal? Why? Who cares?
You hit on something that's so important when it comes to sweeping things under the rug and the government getting involved and giants. And that is, on Coast to Coast, Stephen Quayle reported on an occurrence which is still classified by the U.S. government, where a special ops task force in the remote Kandahar mountains of Afghanistan came across a red-headed giant. And according to the story, they saw pieces of broken equipment outside the cave, and then a 12 to 15 foot tall, red-headed, 6-digit, double-toothed humanoid emerged and attacked them. And long story short, they ended up winning the battle, but upon their return, the soldiers were made to sign non-disclosure paperwork, and the witness that came forward to Steve said that he broke his silence because people have the right to know. And there does seem to be this effective, very effective, non-disclosure agreement that seems to be signed by people in the government when it comes to giants. So there is something to them sweeping this stuff under the rug, and I'm not quite sure what it is.
I gotta agree with it. It baffles me. What's the big deal? Who cares? But because it's swept under the rug, because it's out of place archaeology, stuff like that fascinates me and makes me want to dig a little bit harder to find out what is the truth. Why is this stuff being hidden? Just like the Egyptians in the Grand Canyon. What does that matter? Big deal.
And that's another one that a lot of people don't know about is Kincaid. Can you tell our listeners, I know that you know more about it than I do, can you tell them a little bit about some of the histories and mysteries that might be hidden in the Grand Canyon?
So down in the Grand Canyon, Powell, who's over the Smithsonian, went down there and Kincaid found these caverns that was clear full. They says, man, 50,000 people could have lived in these caverns. It was clear full of Egyptian or Oriental type artifacts, statues and columns and just like in Egypt, all these things carved in the walls. And all of a sudden they closed the canyon down. Nobody can go hiking in these areas anymore. They've named the names of all the area with Egyptian names, but you or I can't go there. If people that do try to go there are buzzed by airplanes or helicopters and again, why, and how we found out about it was a newspaper article in 1907, 1906, something like that, in the Phoenix Gazette talking about this. But then again, they just say that's sensationalized newspaper reporting. It didn't really happen. That was just to get the readership up, but there's been some interesting things found there. I interviewed a person that their father was given a stone with cuneiform writing on it that was found near the Grand Canyon area, and it was Wyatt Earp that found the stone and gave it to their father. And then I had a friend who was down in Lake Powell, and this is when the lake was way high. They went hiking around and found these Egyptian hieroglyphs down there at Lake Powell, and I went looking for them, and I was unsuccessful, but I found another girl who'd found another set of the exact same type of Egyptian hieroglyphs 30 miles away from the ones I was searching for. And so, something went on, and that's the Grand Canyon. That's formed by the Colorado River, and Lake Powell's made out of the Colorado River. It's the same waterfall as where, the Egyptians in the Grand Canyon were.
Man, and that is no joke. When you go to the Grand Canyon, I recently went with my family, and I was blown away by the fact of how secure it is up there on that rim. They don't want any drones flown. They don't want you looking in certain parts of it, as you said. And I recently saw some interesting stuff out of Channel 4 in Utah, where historians, this is an older thing, but historians say one of the richest possible caches of gold is hidden in southern Utah, and it's also buried in caverns. I mean, these natural caverns exist in Utah, and hundreds of people have claimed to have seen entrances, and then they can't find them again, and many claim that it might be Montezuma's treasure in some of these locations. There's a legitimate history that really leads us to believe that there's multiple, as you said, caches of treasure in Utah, and they're scattered all about.
Yep, all throughout Utah. It's an interesting place. There's all kinds of stories from different eras. From the Uintas down to by the Grand Canyon, to all over the place.
It is, and the other thing is just the amount of, as you said, research that's been done by Utahns, and Utahns, you got to hand it to them. They keep amazing records. People like yourself are talking to people that have maps, that have history, that have personal experiences. And some of these experiences aren't just treasure related. Sometimes they get a little weird, don't they? Have you run into some paranormal stuff?
Man, I didn't believe in this paranormal stuff. I thought it was hogwash. I thought overactive imaginations or something. But I was at the Superstition Mountains. I went to the museum there, the Lost Dutchman Museum. I'd been there. The guys that put on the Dutch Hunters Rendezvous invited me down to their rendezvous, and they give me free tickets to the museum. So I was down there, and I was done looking through the museum, and I was leaving, and this older gentleman stopped me, and he says, "Where are you from, young man?" And he had a name tag on, like he worked there. And at the time, I was working on a power plant in Wyoming, so I was living the weekdays in Wyoming, but back home in Utah on the weekends. And so I told him, well, I says, on the weekdays, I live in Wyoming. Weekends, I live in Utah. And I says, where are you from? And he told me, well, first he says, well, yeah, I lived in Wyoming. I worked on all them power plants. And he named all them power plants, including the one I was working on. So I'm thinking to myself, well, this guy must be out here looking for the Lost Dutchman's mine. And because of my YouTube channel, I'm thinking I'm always looking for a new story. And I'm thinking, well, he might have a great story, So I asked him, I says, well, you must be out here looking for the Lost Dutchman mine, or else being from Wyoming. He says, well, I have been looking, but I came out here because of the climate. But I have been looking for a little bit, but more than anything is the history. And I says, well, tell me a great story. I didn't tell him I had a YouTube channel or anything. And I thought, well, if he's got a great story, then I'll try and see if I can get it recorded. Anyways, he starts telling me this story, how he wanted to see these old coke ovens that the pioneers built, and then on the mountain behind it, there was supposed to be a heart on the mountain behind it, and he thought that had to do with the Lost Dutchman mine somehow, and he finally found somebody who could take him out there, and it just so happened the person that was taking him out there, I knew. I just met him at this Dutch Hunters Rendezvous. And anyways, they get clear out there. They go to the coke ovens that the pioneers made. They seen these, and then they're coming out. They're 10 miles back in. It's the middle of July, and they get a flat tire, and then so they change it, and they go some more, and he gets another flat tire. Well, he doesn't have another spare, and so he's riding on the rim, and then he gets another flat tire. So now he's riding on two rims, and they had to go down and up this big wash, and they got stuck. Anyway, he told me this big, long story in detail. They ended up having to hike out in the middle of the night. All night long they was hiking out. And finally, early in the morning, they heard this noise up on this bluff. They hike up there, and there's a road up there and a motor home with an older couple in there. They feed them breakfast, take them back to town. They get their buddy, get new tires, go out and get their Jeep. That was the end of the story. It was a great story, but not one I thought would be great for putting on my YouTube channel. I wished I'd have recorded that, Ryan. I wished I'd have recorded that because 4 months later, I had a guy contact me and tell me that him and his buddy was out by the Gila River, and they was miles and miles and miles away from any road, and they was doing donuts with their motorcycles by the river in the sand there, and one of them flipped up this old necklace, and it looked like an old Egyptian necklace. And that caught my attention because, you know, the Egyptians in the Grand Canyon, and I thought, man, that's, you know, the possibility that in Vernal there on Dry Fork, McCawkey's Ranch, them things look like they could be Egyptian or Aztec, you know. So I went to this Salvador, who knew all the treasure hunters there in the Superstition Mountains. He knew all the legends. He knows everything that was going on. I said, Salvador, you know if there's been any Egyptian artifacts found around here? And he says, well, there's this one guy who found a cavern clear full of either Egyptian or Oriental artifacts. He says, I don't know exactly where the cavern is, but I know the area. Come on, let's go. So we're going clear out there in the middle of nowhere, and he says, stop, Terry. And so I stopped, and he says, look right over there against that mountain over there. He says, that's the coke ovens that the pioneers made, and there's a heart on the mountain above it. And then it dawned on me that you know, this is the story that guy was telling me, and Salvador's the one that took him out there and got stuck, you know. And I says, hey, I met your buddy. He's telling me how you guys came out here, and then you got 3 flat tires and got stuck and had to hike out. He says, oh, yeah, that's Jim Hatt. And yeah, he'd say this, and I'd say, yeah, Jim told me that and this. And he says, yeah, that happened to this. Anyways, went back and forth, and I says, yeah, I met your buddy 3-4 months ago, and he looks at me kind of funny. He says, you couldn't have. I says, what do you mean I couldn't have? He says, you must have met somebody who Jim told this story to, and then they're telling you it's their story because Jim's been dead for 8 to 10 years.
You're
and
kidding.
I thought, no way, you know, because this guy told me he was reliving this story to me, and I'm thinking, my mind started racing, and the only thing I could come up with was that Salvador's wrong. He thinks Jim's dead, but he's really not, because this guy did not look dead to me. You know, I was talking to him just face to face for a half hour. I carried on a conversation with this guy. So anyways, I at the end of the day, I went up to Goldfield Ghost Town and went there ran into Bob Schuse. He's the owner of Goldfield Ghost Town. I says, Bob, do you know Jim Hatt? He says, oh, yeah, Terry, you'd have liked him. He was some kind of an engineer who he worked on all them power plants in Wyoming like you are. Yeah, you'd have liked him. I says, well, Bob, I ran into him, talked to him 3 or 4 months ago, and he says, you couldn't have, Terry. He's been dead for 8 to 10 years. So now my brain is really going crazy trying to remember what happened, 3 or 4 months, previously, trying to figure out what really went on. So I go back to the museum. I'm going to find this guy. And I go there, and I'm looking. I can't find him nowhere. So I go up to the counter. I says, Jim Hatt around? And the guy says, well, I know Jim Hatt works here. I says, yeah, he was here. I met him 3 or 4 months ago. He had name tag on. He was, well, he says, I've been here for 3-4 years, and I don't remember anybody like that. But we have volunteers that come in. And so, maybe he's one of the volunteers that I just haven't met. He comes in every now and again. He says, let me go ask one of the guys in the back. And so he goes in the back, and he comes back. He says, oh, yeah, Jim Hatt. He helped start this museum, but he's been dead for 8 to 10 years. And I thought, man, I sat and talked to him like face to face. He did not look like no ghost to me. There was other people around. I'm wondering, could everybody see him or just me? And they was avoiding running into him because they see me talking to myself. I have no clue. I wished I'd have videoed that, Ryan.
Oh, my gosh. You're not kidding. And these things, they tend to happen. I remember a story that Alien Dave, a.k.a. Dave Rosenfeld, told me. He was going up to 9 Mile Canyon up from the Wellington entrance south of the basin. And he was in the truck with other people, and they saw, it was winter time and blowing sideways and snow on the ground, and they saw a guy walking, in the middle of nowhere, because that's a long road. And they saw a guy walking on the side of the road in a flannel shirt, and they drove by, and they all kind of hesitated for a moment and looked at each other and said, hey, we better turn around. That guy might be in trouble. and they turned around and there was nobody there. So, I mean, these strange things do happen.
Well, it made me wonder, how many times has that happened and you don't know it? I mean, I'd have never known if Salvador hadn't have said, stop, look, there's the coke ovens, that the pioneers, I'd have never even thought it. I'd have never give that day another thought in my mind, Until he said that, I would have never known. And I wonder how many times that's happened, and you just don't know.
And as fate would have it, this is, it's strange. The paranormal does enter some of this. And many of these legends and the myths of these gold reserves or lost caverns usually include a curse of some sort, don't they?
They always include a curse, and I always thought, I didn't believe in the curses, and I always thought, I must not be getting close to the gold because I never have been spooked away yet. I've had my mind play tricks on me, but it's just my mind playing tricks on me. But, until I met that ghost myself, I didn't believe in it. Now I don't know what to think. There's something out there, and it's strange.
Yeah, treasure hunting can be a dangerous business, I'll tell you. And there's plenty of cases. I mean, people going out, not coming back. I spoke with a close friend of mine I used to fly fish with all the time, right in Duchesne. And, his grandfather had some strange tales. And he said, one day he said, I'm going to go out and meet up with some folks and he never came back. And so these unexplained issues are experienced by a multitude of folks in the area. And something I think is really neat about your personal connection to treasure hunting is you've become aware, as a lot have, I'm not that aware of it, but you know what to look for in these areas. There's markers and marks and things that you can look for, aren't there, that kind of lead you in the right direction?
Well, a lot of the marks in that have been destroyed. The Indians destroyed them. Other treasure hunters that didn't want other treasure hunters to find them destroyed them. The pine beetle kill, the forest fires. A lot of these have been destroyed. But if you know the general area, the faults, where you should be looking, and you look for things that just don't look natural. Things that are caved in, depressions in the ground. You just never know. One time, I did see a marker alongside a dirt road on a tree, and so I followed it where I thought it said to go, and there was an old trail, looked like a game trail, but there was a small hole. There was a depression alongside of it with a small hole in it, and I thought, man, that like a gopher hole, and I thought that doesn't look right. So I went and got my shovel and first I got a stick and pushed down it, and it went all the way in. So I got my shovel and just started tapping on it, and the whole thing caved in, man. If I'd have been on top of that, I'd have been caved in there and still down there. I wouldn't have been able to get out. But I tried digging it out by myself, got a rope, got down there and digging it out by myself, and got down to where I could see there was a cavern that took off and went. And I couldn't get it by myself, so I enlisted some help. And I'd be down there digging and putting it in a bucket, and they'd haul it up. And it was alongside a Forest Service road, and the Forest Service came by and says, stop. What are you doing? They seen us doing something. I tried to be discreet, but anyways, the area I was at was a environmental study area. You couldn't do any digging. You couldn't do nothing there, and so I was ran off, kicked off, threatened with fines and everything. So I had to hide it up, and there it still stays where it's at. It goes into a cavern somewhere, but I never fully got it excavated that I could get in to go check it out. And you still can't do anything because it's a environmental or not environmental, a geological survey area. Can't do nothing.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that these areas get locked down. I'm often reminded of it may be actual, it may be factual, and it may be what's really going on, but the coincidences in some of these areas are mind-blowing. And for example, I don't know if you've heard of the Bradshaw Ranch in Arizona. It's a ranch that's got a lot of high strangeness that takes place, a lot like many of the ranches in Utah. And a family owned it, and long story short, because of some tax deals and some back taxes owed, the government took it over, threw up a huge fence, and now it's a cottonwood observation site where they observe these little cottonwood seedlings growing, and there's cameras all over the place. And like I said, it might be actual and it might be the real thing, but on a case-by-case basis, this is sure happening a lot in areas of like extreme importance, in my opinion. Even even in Utah. Yeah.
Yeah, not just that, man, but national parks, monuments, and things like that just completely lock you out. You know, there's been something you talk about treasure there. I have a friend who found 400 gold bars. The smallest one was 12 pounds. You know, it wasn't pure. They was like, 50-60% gold, and the rest had a lot of copper, iron, metal, or silver, things like that in it. But when people find things, you don't hear about it because of the government will take it, or they're in trouble. Antiquities laws. You're not supposed to take any of that stuff. And so anything that's found, you don't hear about it. There is things being found, but you just never will hear about it. So.
That's right. And there's some cases of the Smithsonian I've heard where, some of these things that the Smithsonian comes in and investigates, it just all gets shut down. One particular case that I heard of, this was in Arizona, but it was basically some students were digging in a Hopi Native American site, doing some archaeology, and they came across some Tibetan prayer flags and some other things from other cultures, and their minds just started reeling. They called the Smithsonian, it shut it all down, it sent them all home, and nothing was ever heard from again. And again, you just have to wonder, is it really that just nothing is, it doesn't compute, it's not really what's going on?
Oh, yeah.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. There's can't think of his names. One, James Keenan. Do you know?
Oh,
James
you bet.
Keenan,
I know James very well.
So James, yeah, he was working on a dig and found something below where they was supposed to be digging at, and it didn't fit the norm. And he showed him, and they got in trouble for digging too low, and that was it. It was covered up, hushed up. Another guy I know, he was going through his anthropology in an archaeology school, and he happened to find an artifact that didn't fit the norm, and so he went and took it to him to record it into the books, and they wouldn't record it because it didn't fit, the culture or what they was digging for, so it was just discarded, and how often does that happen, We're not getting the full truth because the full truth is not being recorded. It might not fit that culture or what went on there, but man, if you took that piece here and a piece over there and you put it all together and try to figure out what really did happen instead of what you want us to think happened,
Yeah. And well, I'm just glad that you've joined the search and you're always providing true and accurate information. These mysteries are deep. And, the more people that are involved, and I really appreciate that you're going to be speaking at the gathering at Moon Lake. And I wanted to kind of tell our listeners a little bit about that and what you might be discussing there.
So I am not speaking at our gathering at Moon Lake, but you are. and and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. But we got a lot of great speakers like Utana is going to be talking about the Brewers Cave, and Giants, and she's got all kinds of things. And we've got a guy who's talking about some treasure that he found there on private property, so that the government couldn't, take him. But I think he's going to be bringing some of the artifacts there. He's going to talk about that. And there's all kinds of different things going to be talked about treasure-wise, and giants out of place archaeology-wise. And this is free to everybody. It's we're just putting it on for free, and we hope for some donations to help us pay for it. But this is going to be free to everybody, and this is just going to be a good time. We had it last year, and I was so busy recording and that I couldn't really meet people and talk to people. So this year we're going to have Saturday picnic in the park where we meet and greet and tell open mic and stories, and there'll be a lot of great information there. So this will be good, and I can't wait to hear what you got to talk about.
Absolutely. Ryan. Well, I knew you'd be there. I didn't know if you'd be talking, but I'll hopefully talk to you because Yeah.
So I am going to be speaking at the Phenomicon, and I thought, man, why do they want a treasure hunter talking at Phenomicon? You know, because it's more having to deal with the Skinwalker Ranch and Blind Frog Ranch and the UFO stuffs and paranormal stuffs, but apparently they want to include that. They had me speak last year there too, so I guess they liked it good enough that I'm going to be there again this year. That's in September sometime. I can't remember exactly the dates, 8th and 9th or something like that. I can't remember.
Well, I think it's important that you're bringing this truth to so many people because there's so many lost treasures supposedly hidden in Utah, and you are definitely going after the mystery, and it's intriguing. I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast, and I hope we can talk again soon. As we wrap up, are there any other stories you want to kind of tail off and end with?
You know, I got a ton of stories, but I'm getting older and I forget them, and I just got to if something reminds me of them, then they come out. But other than that, man, I forget them until something triggers my memory. Well, so unless you got something specific you want to talk about, you know, I got a ton of stories, but I just can't think of them all.
Let me ask you this one: have you heard anything about the Butch Cassidy's possible buried treasure, or the lost Josephine gold mine there in Utah?
So the Lost Josephine mine, that's the one where I was telling you about that door this guy seen. You know, and he actually physically seen the door when he was in his early 20s, back in the early 70s. And that's also, you know, where they have the waybill, Garcia's waybill, about the, you know, $1 billion in treasure that I'm actively searching for. But you know, I think because of trying to find this door, I'm thinking something's got to be behind this door, whether it's the gold bars that Garcia left behind, or whether it's something more ancient, or I don't know, you know. So
it's so interesting. The hunt proves to be more interesting than ever. I swear, there's just so many cases, and man, it's so great to finally talk to you. I can't wait to talk to you in person. And thanks again. Let's tell listeners one more time the name of your YouTube channel and how to listen to all the stuff you have going on.
Just go to YouTube and type in Terry Carter or Terry Carter Treasure Hunter and look for the skull and crossbones pirate-looking guy with a patch on its eye.
I love it. Thank you, Terry. I hope you have a great day and look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you, Ryan. You too. Have a good one.
Well, there you have it. Utah treasure hunter Terry Carter. He's been there, talked to the people, been in the places, knows what to look for, and he's all about getting the truth out. So many instances of treasure in Utah, lost connections to the Aztecs, the Spanish, Mormon culture, as well as all the Native American cultures found in Utah. There is an array of information available at his YouTube channel, Terry Carter, on YouTube, and definitely come up to the gathering at Moon Lake. It's going to be a heck of an experience. It's August 12th and 13th at Altamont City Park in Utah. It's going to feature topics with lost gold mines and treasure, history, legends, and folklore of the area, ghosts, giants, Bigfoot, paranormal, and UFOs. Friday night from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Saturday night from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. If you need camping or reservations, visit recreation.gov, and definitely check out Terry Carter Treasure Hunter at YouTube. If you like what you're hearing at Hero Paranormal Podcast, please like and subscribe on YouTube. Also share the episodes. That helps a lot. And if you want to hear the significant amount of information and episodes behind the paywall, check those out at Patreon or Podbean. Just look for Hero Paranormal. We're on there. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evite scene. Blast off, blast off, blast off.